Hello Warlords, JP here from Caffeinated Warlord with another Kings of War battle report covering my progress with Undead at a local Kings of War tournament. Now, if you're wanting to see Undead versus Undead, watch on. That's right. It's Undead versus Undead. We've got my kind of mixed bag list of all kinds of units from the Undead army list versus a much purer kind of list. One that really doesn't have any shambling in it whatsoever, so no surge, and is instead focusing on ghouls, vampires, and I guess some of the more dragon-y kind of elements, the titans that are in the Undead list. So that's a little bit frightening. Now, what is this whole tournament that I'm at? So it's a one-day tournament with 3 games, 2150 points in preparation for an upcoming 2-day event, which I'll definitely be covering when that happens. So this tournament's called Mayhem. It's happening in Victoria, Ringwood, the suburb, and it's at a store called Games Portal. So if you're in the area of Ringwood, go to that store. Games Portal's great. They've got quite a few miniatures. They've got all Games Workshop stuff. They've got some D&D stuff, and they do a lot of cards as well. But anyway, this is the second round. And having defeated the Night Stalkers in that first round, you can go watch that video if you want. If you haven't, then I've moved up to fight Undead. Because of course, you know, the Undead won their first game and now we're fighting each other, because that's what will happen in the end of time. It's just Undead fighting Undead. So, let's get into the list. So I'll go through my list rather quickly and then I'll go through his in a little bit more detail. So let's take a look at the lists. So my list, as I said, is kind of a mixed bag of everything, but to have that mixed bag, you do need some standard unlocking. And what's better for unlocking? No, there's nothing better than zombies. So I have 3 zombie regiments, 1 skeleton spearman regiment, and that's purely because I don't have a 4th zombie regiment ready to go. Then I have 1 troop of wraiths, 2 troops of revenant cavalry, perfect chaff, all of it. And then I have a horde of wights, 1 regiment of Soul Reaver cavalry with Sir Jesse's boots of striding, 1 horde of werewolves with Helm of the Drunken Ram, 1 revenant king on undead horse with Surge 5, 1 necromancer with the inspiring talisman Heal 3 and Bane Chant 2, 1 𝕹𝖎𝖌𝖍𝖙 with Trickster's Wand, so giving it Hex 2, and then finally, to take up a lot of points but also be quite fun, 1 vampire on undead dragon with Lightning Bolt 4 and Staying Stone, increasing that nice nerve to a 18-19. So that's my list, and it's very fun. And just like most Undead lists, you're usually in a good spot. Like you never really are feeling like on the back foot just because you're picking things for fun or based on things you only have. Even an army like this, where this is literally all I have in terms of painted and ready to go, it's still very respectable. So let's go to a list that's a bit more tuned for Undead. So Scott's bringing along, as I said, a bit more of a non-shambling kind of army. And so that's starting with 2 regiments of ghouls for his unlocking, which, you know, are a bit more expensive, but they're definitely faster and hit a whole lot better than the zombies. And then we have Soul Reaver infantry. We have 1 troop and 2 regiments. And the troop is actually quite fantastic. The downside is it has a really low nerve compared to the full unit, but the upside is it still has 15 attacks. It only drops 5 attacks, even though it gets quite a bit cheaper. So anyway, he's got 1 troop and 2 regiments. One of those regiments has the Staying Stone, another regiment has the Chalice of Wrath. Then, continuing on the Soul Reaver trend, we have the Soul Reaver cavalry with Blessing of the Gods, giving them elite. So that's quite terrifying. Then, we just get straight on into all the heroes. So the first hero we have is the Vampire Lord, who has the Blood Rage upgrade and Blade of Slashing. So the Blood Rage, if you're not familiar, increases the Crushing Strength to 3, Life Leech to 3, so making them a real combat character, but it does drop the defense by 1. The cool thing is, it doesn't cost anything. So, like, if you just want to make your guy more hitty, it's pretty awesome. The downside is you cannot put it on a horse, which would be nice, because then it would make him a whole lot faster, but still, he's very good. So that is the Vampire Lord running around, going to hit things. The Sportcaster, we have the Necromancer, and this Necromancer is tooled up. He's got Boots of Levitation, allowing him to move at the double and still cast. He has Knowledgeable 1, so that he can now purchase Veil of Shadows 3 and Scorched Earth 3. The Veil of Shadows definitely was wasted points against my army, of course, because I don't have any like actual native shooting, but the Scorched Earth is incredibly annoying. And he also has heal 3, just because, you know, you've got to have something with it. And he doesn't need surge because he has no shambling. Then we get into the real beat sticks of the list. If there was, like, already the Soul Reaver are very nasty to deal with, both on horse and not. But then we have 2 Revenants on Undead Grape-Burrowing Worms. And I've never gone against these before. You never really see them. They're, you know, but they're actually quite cheap for a -18, 200-point thing. But the problem is, you know, they're melee 4+. It's not great. And also, they don't have Inspiring. So one of them has Inspiring Talisman. The other one, obviously, has no Inspiring Talisman, so nothing. So those two are actually always going to be running together. That's how he does it. So you'll see that in deployment. One babysits the other, so they both have Inspiring. So it's all well and good for them. But yeah, so they're an interesting inclusion, and at least what him bringing them has made me think, well, maybe I can use them, because they are interesting. And the more interesting thing is, maybe I'll see a cool model that fits it perfectly, because you don't always have stuff with wings to match Undead Dragon or something. But you can often find some really cool things that are on foot, on scales, on belly, you know, because it's a worm, so it's going around on the belly. Anyway, but then the list is not over, because we also have an Revenant King on Undead Great Flying Worm with the Brew of Sharpness. So this is semi-budget vampire dragon. It's just slightly worse in that it doesn't have 17-19, it's -18, but you know, same, like if you roll an 18, this guy dies, whereas the other one gets wavered, so similar. It doesn't have any kind of ranged attack. I think it has the option to purchase one, if I recall, and I guess it only has life leech 1, but yeah, for all other intents and purposes, they're pretty much the same, because the Brew of Sharpness brings it up to the same melee output. You wouldn't want 10 attacks on melee 4+, because it's just, I know from having used, you know, giants and things like the Kraken, that melee 4+ on a monster really means it just goes straight from being able to do reliable damage to pretty much just being an amble, just gonna sit there. Melee 3+ turns it into something that can actually deal damage, like the Shadow Hulk. The Shadow Hulk's a perfect example of a giant that is slightly more threatening. It can definitely be an anvil, but it can also hurt a lot. Anyway, that's enough about me waxing on about big units, but you can see that he's got pretty much these 2 major things that are going to hit me hard. He's got all the Soul Reaver stuff, and then he's got all the worm stuff. And so those 2 things, with just a couple of ghouls in between, is quite terrifying. So yeah, that's the 2 lists going up against each other. Quite different, and that's the great thing about Undead, right? You can have, I think at this tournament there was 4 or 5 Undead players, and every list was pretty much completely different. You know, I was probably the most middling in terms of like variety. Like I had a bit of this, bit of that. But you know, there was this list that was definitely vampiric, and then there was another list that had a whole lot more revenants in it. And it's just like you can just kind of pick anything. Which, you know, I mean, there's also a huge variety in the list compared to other armies. But then all that variety is viable, except for perhaps, I just don't know. Yeah, a full ghoul werewolf list, that will be hard to do, but you never know. I know Hordes of Things has just made that army, so I'm looking forward to seeing any battle reports from Hordes of Things with that kind of army. Anyway, let's get into the actual games. Let's see the battlefield. So it is Plunder, this second round game. And so if you're not familiar with Plunder, you have 5 tokens that you have to spread out across the middle line. So the first token, right in the middle, has to go in the middle, and then we each take turns placing 2 tokens with all the usual restrictions, 12 inches apart, blah, 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 and putting them around. And I think I mentioned this before, but the fact that you take turns placing them and putting them along this line is largely superfluous. Like, it can... Really, it should just say, put one 12 inches from here, and another one 12 inches from that, and another 12, and then not force the players to do the back and forth, because really the choice available to you is usually predetermined. Like, you just say, well, actually, I have to put one here, and then, well, I have to put one there. Yeah, it's a silly kind of thing. The only thing you can do with your choice is stuff it up in that you couldn't put down the other token. So in the end, it's better if it just told you where the tokens. Anyway, but that doesn't really matter, because the cool thing about Plunder is then that while most of these tokens are worth 1, after they're placed down, but before you pick sides, you pick 1 each that will be worth 2. And so I've given them bigger red halos around them. So we've got a 2-point token right here on the far right, and the one right in the middle is also 2-point. And I think I made the one on the middle 2-point. I think so. So yeah, that is, and these are loot tokens, so you pick them up and you have to hold them with your units. So that's pretty good, because I think my army's got plenty of things that can pick up and hold things. So that is the battlefield. Let's take a look at the terrain. We have the kind of the Garden of Moor set, being this big blocking terrain right here, and then the much smaller blocking terrain all the way over here is this kind of little statue thing, which includes the entire rim of the statue. So right, it's not just that, as the whole thing is blocking. Then we have flat difficult, so there's one over here, a little shrub, and then another shrub over here right next to the 2-point token on the far right. We have 2 hills, one biggish hill there near his deployment zone, and one smaller hill closer to my deployment zone, but both are pretty much the same spot, and then the trees are also in same-ish spots, so it's kind of making this square. So we've got trees and hills. Wonderful. And then finally we have obstacles, one obstacle jutting out from this Garden of Moor here, and the other obstacle jutting out from the forest, pretty much in the middle. So yeah, obstacles, the 2 of all the different kinds of terrain types. So yeah, your standard kind of board. Now we can already tell that I'm on this side and he's on the other side, and chances are it's based on the fact that you roll off and then you go, I will go the side that I'm already physically standing on, because I am a lazy human, and so that's where I am. I don't know, I cannot recall if I actually had the choice, but considering the identical nature of these, it doesn't really matter. So here is the armies put down. So I will go through my army and then his. So I have from left to right, right on the far left, with the whole purpose of them existing to purely grab that token, is a regiment of zombies. They will just shuffle forward, get that token. And unopposed, so I left that until the end, because obviously we're taking turns of deployment, so I put the zombies down pretty much right when he finished all his, and was like, and these go there. And he's like, yeah. Because the problem with his list, very, very elite. So you can see that in terms of the different armies. Like, maybe if you couldn't get that while I was reading out the army list, and sometimes it's hard to keep all that in the short-term memory, but when you see it, you can see the difference. So obviously you've got all these trash units, zombies and skeleton spearmen, which are slightly less trashy. But yeah, he's got all his Soul Reaver infantry. I guess he could have a ghouls running down here, but even having a ghouls down there means that I've just got more stuff outnumbered. Anyway, so we have the zombies here on the left, on right and the far left, and they're just going to wander up. And then here in the leftish middle, I have pretty much all my hammer units. I have right there in the kind of in line with the Garden of Moor, that is my Horde of Wights, behind which is the Vampire on Undead Dragon. Then I have there the Revenant King on the horse, acting as my just a sole source of surge. Then we have the Revenant Soul Reaver Cavalry, sorry, I've got to upgrade them, and the Wights. I've put the Wights in front of the Soul Reaver Cavalry, whereas I put no chaff in front of Wraiths in front of the Soul Reaver Cavalry, and the Wights, no chaff in front of the Wights, because I just feel like I can actually take advantage of the terrain and get the jump on him. Then I have the Skeleton Spearman in the forest, because that's actually quite fun, having a phalanx unit in a forest. And he's got no terrain mitigation in his entire army, so I think I can also take advantage of that too. I also have 2 regiments of zombies. Now this is definitely more in the middle. Behind these regiment zombies, I have my Necromancer, and also a troop of Revenant Cavalry, because I didn't really have anywhere else to put them. The other troop of Revenant Cavalry are here, ready to jump onto a hill, because I always have this false idea that by putting them on a hill, getting Thunderous 3 is somehow useful, but with 8 attacks, it's not useful, and I should really get out of the habit of trying to think that I can apply a troop of Revenant Cavalry in any kind of combat effective way beyond what they're supposed to do, which is just take hits. Then we have the 𝕹𝖎𝖌𝖍𝖙 to provide some inspiring out here, and also I like the idea that it can jump on the hill and then hex in any direction, but really just hex the Necromancer over there and hopefully stop it doing some scorched earths. And finally, on the far right, which I definitely shouldn't have put them out here, are the werewolves. I've already said in the first game that I have a tendency to send out the werewolves too early, and the one way to make sure you do that is by putting them on the far right, where you feel like they really got to do something. And yeah, it was silly. I should actually force myself to put them in the back ranks behind stuff, and then use them to then countercharge, well not countercharge, but you know what I mean, like when something dies, they then rush in and do some real damage to a hopefully already damaged unit, because I feel like them getting the jump on something is never really working, because they're 18 attacks with crushing 1, so yeah, I mean I gave them Helm of the Drunken Ram, but they're more likely hindered than not. Anyway, let's get into his army, and I'll help you decode. But it's pretty simple. We have over there's the flying worm with the brew of sharpness, with the big wings there, very cool. Then we have the Soul Reaver cavalry there on the hill, all balanced on all kinds of dice. He was definitely trying hard to balance it. Then we have that troop of Soul Reaver infantry right there. So his Soul Reaver, everything's pretty much Chaos Warriors, right? So he's got some Chaos Warrior army, old or new, I'm not sure, but he has Chaos Knights as his Soul Reaver cavalry, and then his Soul Reaver infantry, all Chaos Warriors, and then the Marauders are all his ghouls. So it'll pretty easy to follow. So we have one regiment of ghouls right there, and then we have one regiment of Soul Reaver infantry, the Chaos Warriors, and right there is the vampire ready to go off and chop things, and the necromancer is sitting behind those ghouls. And then on the right, going against what I really have no army there to oppose it, the two worms, and I can't remember which is the inspiring one, but it doesn't really matter because they're always going to be get together. So we've got the two burrowing worms, and then another regiment of ghouls and another regiment of Soul Reaver infantry, already there to oppose what I really didn't put anything down to oppose. And that was the whole idea, was he's already an elite army, so why not divide and conquer something so elite already? And so that was my whole plan with this kind of game, is just to focus on one, kill that off, and then hopefully have time to get the tokens. So I think that's all I need to do. There's obviously no scouts because the undead don't have any kind of scouting stuff, so let's get straight into turn 1. So what did I do? Well, everything moved up. Undead first turn's pretty slow, as you can imagine, so I just moved everything into forests. I like my Soul Reaver cavalry in the forest in case there is shooting. There is not much shooting in this particular matchup. There's no shooting actually. Everything's just kind of angling in, and I'm using this blocking terrain here and then the other units to essentially prevent any multi-charges on any particular unit. The only thing I think you can multi-charge are the wraiths. This troop of wraiths in the front, which I don't mind. You can multi-charge it all you want. You can kill it, you can not kill it. Either way, it'll end badly. So that's kind of how I'm angling everything here. Further out on the right, I'm just trying to maintain a line with all my other kind of dud units, the zombies and skeletons. While up on the hill, yes, you can see the plan, the tragedy coming through, where I'm putting my revenants on a hill because I think I can do something good with them when really they should just be not doing that at all. But unfortunately, I can't stop myself. It's a compulsion I seem to have, and I've put them on the hill ready to charge off somewhere, which they definitely will, as I'll already warn you of that. And then there's the 𝕹𝖛𝖎𝖌𝖍 ready to cast some Hex, which doesn't really matter so much in the early game because, Scorched Earth, but I don't think it's going to be a turn 2 charge. And my werewolves have already redeployed behind this hill, which is good. I've already learnt from my last game to try and hold them back a bit. So I've put them behind their hill, but they've got the leader point on the hill so that they can see over it, should they need to. Right now they can't really see anything because stuff's in the way. And the zombies are starting to go towards the token. Wonderful. I surge the zombies because why not? There's literally no downside to just surging them, and I roll super hot. I've surged 5 and I get 5. What? Are you sure? So they've managed to actually move at the double in a turn, so that's pretty cool. They didn't actually move at the double. Don't get me. I didn't break the rules. It's as if they moved at the double. So in Scott's turn 1, well, he also is just kind of edging forward. His stuff can actually move at the double. None of it's shambling, so that's pretty cool. But everything here is a bit on the hill. So the Soul Reaver cavalry, the infantry, they're pretty tentative. They're pretty scared. Oh, I did do some little lightning bolt shooting. There's a whole reason I took lightning bolt on my dragons, because I might be able to kill chaff. But even lightning bolt 4 is just not reliably going to do anything. It would be nice to have an actual Balefire catapult, because that would really threaten these. But instead, I just have what I have. But yes, and so now the flying worm has kind of tried to get an angle, but I'm hopefully never going to give it that kind of angle. But it's moved over here rather than sitting behind the Soul Reaver cavalry. Over here, the ghouls and the Soul Reaver infantry have moved forward, and everything else is just trying to stay out of sight. The individuals particularly, because he doesn't want overrun charges. Fair enough, they're not fun. Over here, he's moved up quite a bit more aggressively because I don't have that much to oppose him. So we've got the two worms, and then the rest of the infantry just kind of moving up and making sure they're not getting any flank charges on things like werewolves. And I took a closer picture of this, but I cannot recall why. Doesn't really matter, but yeah, well, maybe I'm just trying to take pictures just because I want to show off the relatively cool models. Oh, they're not Marauders, they're actually Huskarls. Or the Clansmen? Yeah, I think they're the Northern Alliance Clansmen. There you go. Whole game, I thought there was something else. Cool. Turn 2. So turn 2, I shuffled up even more slightly. Like, it's painstakingly slow, at least on the left. Charges happened because I couldn't stop myself. But on the far left, I got the token. Wonderful, good zombies. And then over here, with all my hammers, it's all just kind of shuffled around a bit, just to make sure. So I got that obstacle there. I'm not touching it. But if he tries to charge in with just because only one thing can fit, absolutely hindered. Not gonna get through and not gonna kill those whites, I think, because there'll only be one thing that can fit. And then everything else is just kind of angling. I'm trying to get my dragon to also threaten his dragon. I'm not actually going to do anything, but the idea is I just put it in a way that he'll just be like, So I like the dragons to use as a way of forcing your opponent to overthink stuff, when really the threat is actually quite minimal. And the skeletons and zombies just kind of push forward to be in line with the wraiths, but that's about it. Still wanting to keep some forest there, so that were he to charge in off the hill with them, then it would not be a good time for those Soul Reaver cavalry, and these revenants are here. But where did the other revenants go? Well, one unit of revenants went off the hill, off into the ghouls, because I was like, haha, ghouls, fragile. When really Thunder 3 is definitely too much anyway, because they don't have much defense at all, and Melee 4 will not do anything anyway. So yeah, anyway, silly stuff. But I think it was because I did not want to multi-charge the Soul Reaver infantry. No, I don't think I could. I don't think I could. Why did I not? I'm trying to think. But anyway, I did not want hindered werewolves. So the werewolves have charged off the hill as well. So they're crushing one Thunder 2. So they'll be wounding on 2s. So that might kill some Soul Reaver infantry, you reckon. The 𝕹𝖛𝖎𝖌𝖍𝖙 did not multi-charge with them because as I was figuring it out, they would have been hindered and lost any of benefit. So I decided not to, and just put the 𝕹𝖛𝖎𝖌 then here so it could still... I don't think it can actually do a hex or anything, so I just moved it there just so it could, hold these guys back, because it does have quite a large threat range. So yeah, that is the madness that's happening on turn 2 already. And so just showing perhaps a bit more lightning bolt that failed. Over here, well, I even Bane chanted them. Why did I Bane chant them? I should have known that I had... No, actually, no, they wouldn't have had extra Thunderous because they were just peeking the hill. They didn't actually get extra. So I Bane chanted them to get them to 2+, wounding on 2+. And did only 7 damage. So if you do the math, with your 3+, you should be hitting with 12, and then of the 12, I don't know, 10. So this is definitely quite a bit under. Even a 10 though, and I need to roll 7s twice to get rid of them. But yeah, when you do 7 damage, I need to roll 10 twice. That's hard. That isn't going to happen. And yep, certainly did not. So that kind of sucks, poor guys. And the Revenant Cavalry just did 2 damage, so it was like, why do you expect anything else? But here we are. But, throwing away Revenant Cavalry, not a big deal. Throwing away werewolves, that is a big deal. They're expensive. And I know they can't take Soul Reaver infantry on the countercharge because they are not that tough. And here, yeah, I think there's some lightning bolt done on them, so that's pretty cool. But I think it's now time for his turn. So, his turn, well, the Soul Reaver infantry troop and the ghouls charge into the revenants, and then we've got the vampire with the blood rage and the Soul Reaver infantry going back into the werewolves. They're definitely dead. The Soul Reaver cavalry, pretty scared, don't know what to do, and same with the dragon, the flying worm. Too many worms. That didn't want to do anything either. So it's a bit of a standoff. Then over here we have the burrowing worms just edging in, trying to get some kind of charge on, but right now they're just looking at zombies, so I'm like, whatever, you want to kill zombies, go ahead. They might take a while to kill zombies because they are only hitting on 4s and have limited attacks, so we'll see how they go. Whereas the rest of the infantry over on this right hand side of the battlefield is just taking its sweet time to get over here. So he definitely wants to use these Soul Reaver infantry because he needs them to actually do some kind of damage because they're too expensive to grab tokens, but the ghouls can go off and grab a token, so that's good for them. So yes, expectedly, we see the demise of the werewolves and also the Revenant Cavalry. So what did they do for all their trouble? Well, in the end, since these have life leech 2, they managed to do 5 damage, which really isn't worth the investment of werewolves. I could have 2 balefire catapults and they could easily do 5 damage over the course of a game. They could do 5 damage in 1 round and not have any hit back on them. So, you know, it's my fault that I got into this situation. I could have kept my werewolves perfectly alive to do other stuff later. But here we are. And the 𝕹𝖛𝖎𝖌 is just kind of sitting there like, oh, okay, whoops. Turn 3. So it's time to do nothing a bit more. So with that whole shake-up, unshaking his lines, like pretty much they're fine, I've just kind of shuffled things around a bit. I've, I think I had to move up my whites in order to maintain a charge on the Soul Reaver cavalry, because they've been slowly edging back after having come forward, and also have a charge on the dragon, so to threaten that. And the Soul Reaver cavalry the same, the race the same. They're all kind of moving up and just being like, ooh, watch out. My dragon has completely moved over to here to just kind of have a whole line of sight down the front of my line. So if anything were to charge in and bounce, in he comes, hitting them in the side. And so yeah, I've got all my crappy units just kind of splaying out, and there's some of the zombies are starting to turn to the burrowing worms because I don't want to get too surprised. I've edged back my Revenant cavalry so that if something were to hit the zombies and then bounce, I can charge in, hopefully, maybe even in a flank, but I don't think I quite angled the zombies well enough for that. And my 𝕹𝖛𝖎𝖌 has gotten out of dodge and just moved over here behind this obstacle, and from here we'll be hexing, because it's height 3, the Necromancer, to hopefully stop some Scorched Earth, because he's been trying to cast Scorched Earth all game on my I think it was, yeah, on the cavalry, my Soul Reaver cavalry. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Oh, and the zombies coming around the back, perhaps going to threaten something, or at least making him think. So in his turn, well, we can kind of, since I didn't have any combat to show on my turn, it's immediately his turn. And so what's happened? Well, we have 1 ghouls regiment charging into zombies here. And I think this is at the end of his turn, actually. So we can see that the burrowing worms had no, and the Soul Reaver infantry had no problem taking out that zombie unit there, so they're gone. Boo-hoo. This troop is kind of stuck in the middle. Necromancer kind of inspiring things. Blood Rage guy has gone off to fight the 𝕹𝖛𝖎𝖌, and I think he completely whiffed. Still only 7 attacks, right? The Soul Reaver cavalry have really moved back because they really don't want to get charged, but that's cool, they're just kind of going back. But what's taken their place is the dragon. The dragon's like, you know what, I got this, I can do this. Whether that's true or not, who knows. So the flying worm is replacing the position of the Soul Reaver cavalry, which are far too scared to get involved in all this. So that is the end of turn 3. Yeah, so there's a picture of a vampire not killing a werewolf, so werewolf supremacy, and yes, dead zombies. And these guys are just coming closer. Well, one's coming closer, and then the ghoul's picking up a token. The 2-point token, though. And so starts the gathering of victory. But can I stop it? Well, here we can see that everything, he had to kind of, he didn't want everything just sitting there, so he moved these guys sideways, so sideways, and then he could rotate these guys so that there's no possibility of flank charges from zombies or anything like that. And so he's facing, ready to do some more battle here. And yeah, the ghouls didn't break the zombies, obviously. Ghouls just don't have that much damage output, really. And what else are we looking at here? Yeah, just the positioning of all the different burrowing worms. There's nothing I can really do to them apart from just throw some Revenant cavalry, so that I shall do, because I want to slow them down while I, like I said, divide and conquer the rest of the army. So it's turn 4. I'm actually quite proud of myself. It's only in turn 4 that I really charged my whole army. And so it all went together in one big wave. Kind of just all happened that everything just started being in range, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to charge with everything. And sometimes you want that, because what happens is then, you know, the first wave get out of the way, they charge off, and then you can immediately use the second wave to then charge off and hit something else entirely, or the same things if you can, but you know, that's neither here nor there. So the flying units were the first to jump off and get out of the way so that everything else can charge, and so the wraiths and the whites, not to be confused, which are always confused by me and by my opponents, by everyone ever, went into the flying worm. Hopefully going to destroy that. The Soul Reaver cavalry went into the troop of Soul Reaver infantry, very easy to do, and the skeleton spearmen and the zombies went into the ghouls. I don't really expect them to kill it because it's, you know, it's a hindered skeleton spearman unit, but you never know. You know, just get in there, have some fun, maybe kill something. But the thing I'm very proud about is the dragon. The dragon was sitting here indeed and measuring 20 and seeing the flank and being so gosh tall could see right past this forest. I was like right here, could see the Soul Reaver infantry, and flew right in to get a flank charge. That's always what you want with a dragon. And yeah, just me constantly moving it around meant that eventually it happened. And yeah, here's the Revenant Cavalry throwing their unlives into the burrowing worm and trying to stop it. Oh, and the 𝕹𝖛𝖎𝖌𝖍𝖙 is over here going into the Soul Reaver Cavalry to just disorder them, hopefully. Oh, and he did take some damage. Look, there's a little bit of damage there. So he was damaged thanks to this guy, but being, you know, a nimble ground guy, monster, he didn't get to lose his nimble or anything like that, or disordered, so off he goes to do crushing 2 damage. So it just needs to do 1 damage and hopefully disorder them, just so when I do hopefully kill this, the charging Soul Reaver Cavalry will be somewhat weaker. So here, not much to really say about this, but yeah, I think I'm just showing stuff. Yeah, and I decided to move back my zombies a bit, because I'm like, actually, don't throw these away, you idiot. They're holding your token. And so, let's see some aftermath. Well, yes, the flying worm is dead. I turn my whites sideways, but only after rolling a nice hot full going forwards with the wraiths. So the wraiths went forward and stayed an inch away, and there's no way that those Soul Reaver Cavalry can get around them, so it's safe to turn my whites and actually face the important part of the battlefield. So that's what I'm planning to do there. Then over here with Soul Reaver Cavalry, killed the Soul Reaver infantry troop, no problems, so they're now also facing this way, and the skeletons and zombies somehow managed to kill that regiment of ghouls, so they're also facing that way. The worst thing is, though, the one thing that didn't die, which really would have been nice if it did, is that my dragon going into the flank did a great amount of wounds. 18? Not actually, because I think they already had 5, maybe less, because they would have life leeched. So anyway, they would have had 3 or something. I did like 12. I did a lot of damage. Very proud of it. Maybe I did 15 damage, but I did a lot of damage. And it was double ones. So there you go. The double ones are going to appear not just at the the random nerve check that you do for a unit you don't expect to get anyway. It's going to happen when you do a huge amount of damage on a unit that can actually heal itself slowly over time. So that's cool. Yeah, right now they're devastated, but let's hope they stay that way. So yeah, my dragon is now sitting out there. Thankfully, there doesn't seem to be any consequences of this, which is part of the reason why I took the charge, because I was like, oh, I don't think there's any consequences. But still, he's out there and going to get hit back by Soul Reaver infantry, which, if they get healed up before they hit, they might not be devastated anymore and do a lot of damage to my poor dragon, because he cannot take that kind of punishment. So yeah, that's my turn. I'm quite happy with it. The whole thing kind of came together. Scott said he was just impressed with how it kind of all charged at the same time, and I think this is the first time where holding back really paid off, where I was like, well, it's actually probably the first time I've really held back completely, except for the werewolves. Imagine what would happen if I still had the werewolves and they were charging at the same time, you know? Where would they be going? What would they be killing? Maybe they're going to be threatening the other Soul Reaver infantry or something. Who knows? But we'll never know, because unfortunately they died. Me throwing them into something that in the end got double ones anyway, so they really did nothing. Yeah, still bitter, but whatever. Scott was impressed, I'm impressed. Let's see if I can keep it going. So yeah, just showing off the deaths, and oh, that was, yeah. Anyway, turn 5. Turn 5? No, that can't be right. Yeah, I guess, oh no, I must not have taken any pictures for his turn. I'm so sorry, Scott. But anyway, you can kind of see the aftermath of what he did here. So obviously, Revenant Cavalry died to the worms, because they would have double charged there and turned and faced. The other regiment of Soul Reaver came up, so this is turn 4 for Scott. And yes, obviously he went back into my dragon and did 8 damage, which is quite a lot, and kind of scary. So they must have been healed up enough, and now they've also got their life leech helping them get down to 16 damage, which, still obviously, when they get sneezed on, they'll die, but, they've already done enough. They've managed to start hurting my dragon. Yeah. So now we'll go to my turn. Oh, and he also charged, he had to charge into the wraiths because he had no other choice, so charge into the wraiths, he did. So in my turn 5, well, I'm going for the 2 different tokens. Unfortunately, these are the 2 1-point tokens, so I need to really get this 2-point token that is right here in the middle, underneath this Soul Reaver infantry. So that's why I've kind of sent all kinds of things in. So right now I'm charging in with the dragon here, and there's a you can't see, but there's a vampire here that my Soul Reaver Cavalry have charged into the Blood Rage Vampire, because that Blood Rage Vampire was actually charging along with the Soul Reaver infantry, the devastated ones, to do some damage to my dragon. Managed to do quite a bit, and now I've countercharged the Soul Reaver infantry to kill them with the dragon, and hopefully kill that vampire, overrun, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that's the plan here. Zombies going forward to just feed the burrowing worm machine that seems to be eating half my army, but you know, gotta give them what they want, and just hold them off for just a little bit longer. Yes, and then over here, well, I've got the wraiths obviously tying up the Soul Reaver cavalry, and I have turned these guys sideways. That's Florian's just doing some dishes. That's good. Thank you. Anyway, I have turned the whites, just slid them sideways, 3.5 inches, still staying an inch away, and I'm obviously going to surge. So here we go. I'm doing some kind of Healy stuff. Maybe I'm just taking pictures. Action pictures. Boom. They surged in, flank charge with whites. You're dead. There goes the Soul Reaver cavalry. Wraiths turned around. Whites facing the correct way. Everything's coming in. It's all pretty cool. But over here, obviously managed to kill the Soul Reaver infantry. Life leached up. I also healed him a bit. But then we also have the Soul Reaver cavalry bounced off that vampire. I mean, he's only defense 4. Is it too hard to ask to kill him? But I didn't. So the vampire's holding up my Soul Reaver cavalry unit single-handedly, which is just fantastic. So yeah, that's what's happening there for the turn 5. Alright, so next we have, yeah, Scott's turn. So Scott countercharges with his vampire, and yeah, is that it? That's it. Turn 6. So yeah, I guess we can. Somehow I'm not taking pictures at the end of his turns. Only my turns, but I guess we can figure it out. Somehow this is all not quite the way I want it to be, but here we go. So turn 6, we can see that things have charged in. The vampire still alive somehow. So you know, if you ever think that it's a bit too weak when you're dropping to defense 4, don't worry about it. Don't worry. But yes, I've decided to pull back my vampire dragon so that it's not going to get charged by anything, particularly these burrowing worms that want to eat everything, which have eaten the zombies. They're already gone. And so now I'm just trying to take out these guys and then hopefully get to this token right here, because that's a 2-point token that's not being used right now, but I need to get it. I need to. And so I need to kill the Soul Reaver infantry, which have only got 6 damage on them. They've obviously come from here, charged in to... yes, they killed the Soul Reaver cavalry, and now I've charged them with the wraiths and the whites. So yeah, can I kill them? That's pretty much I have to, because in this turn 6, you know, unless there's a turn 7, maybe I can go off and get the token. But right now, this single ghoul unit has actually been marching around the battlefield just grabbing stuff. So it's grabbed that 1 point here, it's grabbed the 2 point off in the distance, so it's got 3 points on its own, and I just have 1 and 1. So I just have 2 points. I need to get this middle token, but right now I'm kind of getting stopped. So if I could just get there, that would be great. And so we do kill them, and I didn't go forwards because I didn't want to give up a flank, so I've kind of sat here. I think also he's contesting it, the vampire, so I couldn't have picked it up willy-nilly anyway. I needed to get into another combat. So really, I need a turn 7 to even think about getting these kinds of tokens. But to make sure that I don't, he's charged in right here, so he's managed to get in with both the burrowing worms. One burrowing worm takes out the wraiths all by himself, whereas the other one does some damage to the whites and doesn't manage to kill them. And then finally we've also got the Blood Rage Vampire going into the dragon, trying once more to kill it, but not quite doing so. But that Life Leech 3 is really keeping that vampire alive this whole time. It's actually a really good upgrade. I think the Blood Rage thing is fantastic, so I might use it sometime when I want to use it. The only problem is it's a lot of points on an individual. But yes, the guys are coming here to pick up the last token, but they don't think they quite made it, because I don't think that's what ended up happening. But we'll see when we get to the final page. So yeah, there we go. They've got 1 2 point. They've got some other points, and yeah, they were unchallenged. Imagine if I had the werewolves. They could have been harassing these guys, perhaps. Who knows? It could have been a completely different game, but I just kind of let them do their own thing, when really maybe I should have been holding them back with werewolves. So yeah, here we go. No, it definitely got that 2 point, because he got 5 victory points. I got 2. Obviously it looked like I killed a lot, but it was actually so close in terms of the attrition. So really, it was just the victory points that he got over me that then skewed it slightly more towards him using blackjack scoring. So it was a 15 to him, 6 for me. But yeah, I'm pretty proud of that game anyway, because tactically, when it came to the battle, all kinds of cool stuff happened. Everything that I wanted to happened, apart from my silly werewolves and Revenant Cavalry just throwing them away. But I gotta say, you know, the dual Burrowing Worms are pretty solid. You know, it's just 2 big chunks of -18 defense 5. It's not going to be removed easily. And when they're together, they back each other up. You hit one, the other one will get you. And it's just, obviously, I never even tried to get them. I just kind of tried to slow them down. But yeah, if I had my werewolves there, maybe something could have happened and I could have held them back for a bit longer. I could get back to the werewolves, so just threw them away. But yeah, really, it just surprised me, that use, and I like seeing that kind of new thing. And it's, you know, it's like I said, you know, it's, oh yes, another undead army, but it was an undead army doing something different. He didn't want shambling. He went to the units that didn't have it and tried to use them as best as he could. And you know what? He did. He managed to use them as best he could. And so I'm definitely going to be looking around for cool models that can be undead burrowing worms. I mean, yeah, the mantic one, definitely pretty cool, but I mean, when it comes to big wormy things that are undead-like, the world's the oyster with the 3D printing world and other ranges, so like, it's definitely something that I'm going to look to include, because wow, it was nasty. And you know, really, it's only 420 points for those 2 things running around, so pretty cool. But yeah, also still think about the scenario. My whole thing hinged on getting that middle token, and when it was only right at the end that I could start really contesting it, things were going wrong. So while the whole tactic of the game worked, that didn't work. And so also, I probably should have made sure a 2-point token was where my zombies were going to go get it, so I could have got that one. But instead, I think I just picked the middle one because I thought I could definitely get that. So that was also on me. So yeah, that was a great game with Scott. He is fantastic to play against. Obviously, I would like to see him painted army, and so hopefully eventually that whole army will be painted and multi-based and looking gorgeous. But until then, I was fine. It was very clear what the units were. Everything was very different, so at least I wasn't getting confused, because that's the worst when things are unpainted, and then also, so everything's grey and everything's samey, and then you don't even, you can't tell that what's what. So hopefully we'll see that whole army get nicer and better. But otherwise, yeah, just make sure you look out for my final report coming out. So 1 more game to go for this tournament. I'm very excited. I was getting a bit brain drained, because yeah, it's the first time I've been using this army before, so there was a lot of stuff I had to keep in my short-term memory and keep checking my army lists. But you know, that's what the whole point of this is trying to get the reflexes of using this army, so that when I get to the big 2-day tournament, I'm not going to completely just, you know, blow out and by game 3 just not being able to think at all. So hopefully I can get some of this more innate thinking about how to use the army built in. So yeah, until next time, keep caffeinated.